Thanks for joining me. You really need to start asking hard questions, especially if you're a woman and you love putting on a lot of makeup, changing how you look, changing your image and stuff. And I want you to take a look at this. This German woman was born white and now she has transitioned to a black person. Shocking, I'm sure. And now take a look at what is all around us. We are surrounded by trans people, who are those men that are transitioning to become females, females that are transitioning to become males. I want you to ask yourself this question. What sin is a trans person actually committing when they transition from male to female or female to male? So take out the sexual immorality here. So we're assuming that this trans person is not sexually immoral. If you can answer that question truthfully, then I want you to apply your reasoning, your answer to why then, as a woman, would you put on another woman's hair to make yours look longer? You've taken a hairpiece from Brazil or from India. We all know where this hair is coming from. If it's from India, we know that they go to the temple, they cut off their long hair and they sacrifice to their god and they make hair pieces. And now you're putting on this long hair piece. How are you different from a trans person who has changed their outlook, their outside? What is the actual difference? Now, if you are honest with your answer, you would tell me that a trans person is insulting the image that God created. They were created a male, so why do they want to look like a female? So this is somebody who hasn't even done any physical changes. They haven't cut any bits of their bodies out or made any changes. They're just dressing up as a woman. They want to look like a woman because they don't feel comfortable in the body that they have. But before God, they are denying the image that God created them to be. Can we at least agree on that? They are denying whom God created them to be. They prefer to be a woman. You prefer to have long hair. You prefer to have longer lashes. You prefer to have pink cheeks and red lipstick. We excuse our sin because we paint it as, oh no, it's just temporary. It doesn't change our nature. Yes, a trans person, it's also temporary. They just dress up at night. So if they're not committing any sin before God, then you are also not committing a sin before God. If you think they are committing a sin before God, are you not committing a sin before God in changing or making a lie of who God created you to be? Now, I gave you Revelations 22, which shows you that those that maketh a lie will not be permitted to enter into the gates of heaven and partake of the tree of life. And making a lie, we all know there are many different ways of lying. When a trans person is presenting themselves as a female, they are lying about their identity. They are presenting a false image of who they really are. How is it different from you plastering your face and denying the beautiful person that God created you to be? How is it different from you changing your image, changing your identity, presenting another false image of you? It's exactly the same sin. So not only are you making a lie, this is actually an insult to the Father. When a trans person decides, I don't want to be a man anymore, I don't want to be a woman anymore, I feel much more comfortable presenting myself to the world as a woman or as a man, they are insulting the God who created them. Genesis 1:31 says specifically, God called good all that he had created. And we spoke in part 4 about the corruption that was brought in Genesis 6 by the fallen angels who started teaching men to change themselves. And they taught women how to make cosmetics and apply on themselves for the first time to corrupt the image, the nature of who they were, to make women feel that they were not adequate, they were not beautiful enough. That's why they needed cosmetics. And women took that on from Genesis 6, from the fallen angels. They're still actively involved in helping men or facilitating us becoming very wicked before God. And so if you look at our time today, compared to Genesis 6, even though the world was so wicked and God destroyed the world in Genesis 6, the wickedness in our current generation, it just blows your mind. If you understand how wicked the world has now become, it is shocking. Most believers really understand that these are the end times and that's why the world has become so wicked. And I can assure you that the fallen angels are actively participating in making sure that they make men as wicked as can be change their image, change their nature, so that we look nothing like the Father. And when I talk about looking like the Father, or how having our nature corrupted, it's not just about the external. So I'm not all about you throwing away your makeup, really. Like I told you, I loved my makeup as well, until I began to understand the system of the beast, the nature of the beast, the nature of the Antichrist, the system that is working today, that wants us to change who we are, deny our image, and become like the enemy, take on the nature of the beast. This is the battle that is raging against us right now. The battle is to change your nature inside, to make you look like the enemy, and outside. Remember when Jesus was speaking to the Pharisees about how they are liars, he said, you are like your father, the devil. Their nature was there, like their father. This is the battle. Your nature cannot look like the enemy in any way, shape, or form. So if you are still lying and calling yourself a Christian, you need to wake up. If we are harboring hate in our hearts, if we are unforgiving, if we are resentful, if we are full of competition and we are not satisfied with what we have, that is our nature that is corrupt, and it looks exactly like the enemy. So this is the greatest lie that the enemy has really propagated in this end time. And this is also caused by a misinterpretation of the Bible, the understanding that God is only interested in your heart. So we should only look at what's going on in the heart, and anything else that is outside is irrelevant. That is a lie. When the prophet was called to look at the sons of Jesse, and he saw this great big man, all the sons lined up when he was looking for a king, he was looking on the outside, because as men, we still do that. We still look on the outside and we think, wow, look at his stature. He should be king. This is what the prophet was thinking. He looked at the second son and the Lord said, no, this is not the one. He was looking on the outside. We are impressed by the outside. And the Bible even warns us in the New Testament that when people come into your church, don't look on the outside. Love them, receive them as God's creation. Just love and receive people without looking at people and assessing people and judging people based on how they look. If they look like they are dripping, filthy rich, then you rush them to the front, you give them a seat of honor. The Lord hates those things. So the story of Samuel sent to anoint a king does not mean that the inside is the only part that matters. We can do what we want with the outside. If we use that logic, it means that God also doesn't really care if people transition to becoming male or to becoming female. It's like he doesn't really care about the outside, right? There is so much that is happening right now that the enemy wants mankind to do on the external appearance of men. And we think that it doesn't matter. Why do you think the enemy has an agenda for the trans people? Why do you think there's an agenda about that? It's still to insult God, to mock God, to make people look down on the image that God created them to be. In other end, and the results are devastating. People are losing their identities because your identity is linked to your purpose. So now if you're born a man and now you're dressing up like a woman, your identity has been messed up. How are you going to fulfill your purpose? You see, there is an agenda of the enemy to deny us of our identity in Christ. And he wants us to partake of the nature of the beast. So throw out the lie that our external doesn't matter. Around you now, there are people who are calling themselves furries, right? These are people who are calling themselves an animal. They are now cats. And they mew, they don't speak anymore. They act like a cat. And we are supposed to recognize that new identity, that this person identifies as a cat. And we think that there is nothing wrong. There is no agenda against our externals being changed. So this is a spectrum. I really want you to consider this as a spectrum. Somebody who's calling themselves a cat or a trans man, somebody who has now changed their identity, like Michael Jackson now was born black, now is white. It's a spectrum. So fine, these people are on the extreme side of changing their nature, changing their image. But on that spectrum, there's a range of change, and it trickles down to you and to me and our red lips and all the things that we are doing to change our outside, because we hate who God created us to be. There is such a sense of insecurity in us. What is inside of you is always reflected on the outside. So what you reflect on the outside is an indication of what's going on inside. So when we see a person who is now a trans man, They are reflecting what's going on inside. Same as us. When I put on my wig, I'm reflecting what's going on inside. So the question is, am I glorifying God with a lie? How are you glorifying the one who created you when what's on the inside is so unhealthy and just showing it on the outside in the form of this made up new face, new person? And we think we're glorifying God in that way. We are not glorifying God. So that's why we have to start asking ourselves the hard questions. Let's go back to the Bible. Let's go back to understanding what actually happened in the Garden of Eden. I'm going in the next part. I really want you to follow the next part because I'm going to go back to the garden. I'm going to go back to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because as long as we don't understand the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we will not be able to understand how the system of the beast, which is what's in operation right now, is going to sweep away the majority of the church and make us unfit to be the bride, because we would have not understood the importance of our nature, how our nature has to be like God. There's potential in all of us to either manifest God, the Christ, or to manifest the men of sin that we see in the book of Revelation. So join me in the next part, because I'm going to talk about the men of sin. I'm going to talk about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because we need to understand that. We need to understand the system of this world. We need to understand the Antichrist system. So be blessed, and I'll see you next time.